My name is Lucy, and at 38 years old, at dinner, Mom boasted about my sister's four-bedroom mansion, so I finally spoke. I make more than both of them combined. Silence fell. What followed was an ear-splitting stillness. Halfway to her mouth, my mom's fork halted. Perched dangerously on the tines was a slice of grilled salmon. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. My stepfather, Richard, finally looked up from his phone, and my sister Amelia's wineglass lingered on her lips. It was the first time he had done so all evening. It took me 3 years to finally say it. Over the course of 3 years, I endured subtle insults, passive-aggressive comments, and the stigma of being the family disappointment. Now I was having my moment, sitting at this pricey cafe that Mom had picked out because it was near Amelia's new house. I must digress, however, for the story does not begin with supper. I was 13 years old, and Amelia was 15 when the pattern started. It wasn't until I was 33 years old that I was able to finally overcome it. Amelia had the best childhood ever. She possessed an air of natural charisma that grown-ups couldn't help but admire. She was 2 years older, athletically gifted, and academically gifted. I was the introvert who preferred to stay home and read than mingle with my friends. The relationship between my parents further worsened once my mother remarried Martin, 2 years after our divorce, which occurred when I was 9 years old. From his first marriage, Martin inherited a daughter, but she and her mother lived in a different nation. His surrogate daughter, Amelia, became someone he could like and be proud of in no time. Well, I basically vanished into thin air. A full scholarship allowed Amelia to attend college. To help cover the costs of my community college education, I worked part-time in a bookshop. After finishing college, Amelia landed a well-paying marketing position. While I sought to define my life's purpose, I labored through a number of administrative and retail jobs. Daniel, Amelia's college sweetheart, was married in a grandiose ceremony that was mostly covered by Mom and Martin. Family dinner chat suggested that I was still single and focused on my profession, which they took as a sign that I couldn't maintain a relationship. The problem is, I wasn't having quite as much trouble as they anticipated. I was stealthily constructing my own life, while Amelia had the idyllic existence everyone had imagined. I'd always had an innate talent for math and a firm grasp of how the financial markets worked. Before transitioning into financial consulting, I worked as a freelance bookkeeper for local companies. Even though I was making a respectable living, I chose to live frugally and not flaunt my prosperity. In the meanwhile, Amelia's picture-perfect life began to crumble. Daniel was more happy with his middle management job and weekend golf games than she had anticipated. He lacked ambition. Their marriage devolved into a string of pricey acquisitions and passive-aggressive social media posts meant to portray an unauthentic joy. To Mom and Martin, though, it was all irrelevant. The one with the spouse, the beautiful home, and the Instagram-worthy life was still Amelia, the successful one. At family reunions, they still had to find an excuse to explain myself, because I was the one who let them down. 3 years ago, things finally broke down. Ethan, an amazing architect, and I had been in a committed relationship for the first time in years. I was truly happy after 9 months of being with him. At last, I hoped I'd have something that would change my family's perception of me. I took Ethan to celebrate Amelia's birthday with her. It was a major event. Everyone from her inner circle, as well as our extended relatives, showed up because she reserved a private room at a fancy restaurant. Despite my nerves, I couldn't wait to meet everyone and introduce Ethan. It was evident that Amelia had her sights set on him within the hour. She spoke over him, had him laugh a little too much, and used his arm as an excuse to make her point. I tried to jump in on their chat, but she always managed to change the subject to something I didn't understand or bring up memories that only Daniel and I had. The most upsetting part was seeing the expression of joy on Ethan's face whenever she spoke to him. He would inevitably be captivated by Amelia's irresistible charm. She had always had that kind of charisma. She was chatting about an architecture project that her marketing agency was working on, and by the end of the night, he had exchanged business cards with her. After a fortnight, Ethan ended our relationship. He told me we wouldn't be a good fit in the long run, despite his admiration for my character, and that he couldn't see us being together. Some 3 months later, I came across pictures on Amelia's Instagram where she and Daniel were seated at a dining table with Ethan and his new fiancée. From what I can tell, that business link was the catalyst for their friendship. It was irrelevant that I was never told whether Amelia and Ethan had an illicit relationship. The fact that Amelia had appropriated something from me and turned it into something about her was what was important. My loved ones pretended like nothing had happened again. I got down to brass tacks. Then I had had enough of attempting to get their respect or approval. Creating the life I want would take precedence, and I would not let anyone in on the secret if they failed to recognize my value. With renewed vigor, I dove headfirst into my task. I went into business for myself as a financial consultant, specializing in helping small and medium-sized companies that larger companies disregarded. For some reason, I excelled at it. Helping business owners maximize earnings while reducing risks was my specialty, and I had a gift for identifying opportunities that others missed. I was generating more money in a year than I ever imagined imaginable. I out-earned Amelia and Daniel put together in just over 2 years. Just across town, I purchased a stunning home in a hip neighborhood, a renovated craftsman from the 1930s with original hardwood flooring, a beautiful garden, and enough character to make design magazines green with envy, not a McMansion like Amelia's. Oh, and I also crossed paths with Samuel. Samuel again, but this one is very different from my stepfather, a pediatric surgeon. He had gentle eyes and a sharp wit. Pretending or making an impression on anyone was something he couldn't care less about. In his spare time, he volunteered at a clinic for low-income families while working long hours at the children's hospital. 6 months after we moved in together, he proposed. Our relationship lasted a year. The proposal was understated. On a peaceful Sunday morning, as we sipped our coffee in the garden and perused the newspaper, he asked me. It was a basic ring, yet it was gorgeous. After I confirmed his proposal, he kissed me passionately, like if I were his most prized possession. I was hesitant to immediately inform my family about our engagement. I was relishing in the joy, shielding it from their boundless criticism and lack of excitement. It was clear to Samuel protecting positive things from harmful family dynamics was second nature to him because of his upbringing by a narcissistic mother. Rather, I let my mind wander to the future I envisioned for myself. My husband Samuel and I chose to have a modest, close-knit wedding with only our closest friends and the relatives who were there to celebrate with us. An old inn with gardens that looked out over the lake was the perfect location we found. We worked with a florist, a photographer, and a caterer that focused on serving food straight from the farm. We also planned to host a housewarming party to celebrate the occasion. We didn't want to brag because we had worked so hard to create this lovely place and wanted to share it with those important to us. Our closest friends, Samuel's hospital co-workers, some of my business clients who became friends, and most importantly, Samuel's family, wonderful people who welcomed me with open arms, were all invited. Not inviting Amelia, Richard, or my mom was an intentional decision on my part. There was no animosity behind it. The primary motivation was safeguarding my happiness, while vengeance played a little role. They had spent decades lowering my self-esteem and making me feel unimportant. That kind of vibe wasn't going to be welcome in my lovely new house. A mystical celebration was held. On the back patio, we arranged tables and placed lights throughout the yard. I had a fantastic spread of food prepared, with the help of Samuel's chef's sister-in-law. Guests greeted our home with laughter and mingling. The parents of Samuel rounded me out to express their gratitude for the impact I had on their son. In her toast, my best friend Leah expressed her admiration for the life I had created. There were so many kind, supportive people there, and the atmosphere was perfect for a housewarming party. Seeing all those joyful faces brought a feeling of kinship that I had never had with my own family before. Eventually, my mom found out, of course. Everyone knew each other in this little town, and there were even some friends who didn't know about the family conflict who posted about it online. Mom gave me a call around 1 month following the celebration. I could hear the hurt and uncertainty beneath her bland tone as she said, "Leah, I heard you had some kind of party at your house." "Yes," I responded plainly. "A housewarming party?" "Oh." This was followed by a lengthy silence. "That sounds nice. I wish I'd known about it." "It was lovely," I responded, avoiding the underhandedness. "Here we go again." "Well, maybe next time you could let us know. We would have loved to see your new place." My response was a simple maybe, even though I and my companion were well aware that there would be no another opportunity. Until then, that was about all. Mom would mention wanting to see the house every once in a while, and I would respond with vagueness. Taking a different tack, Amelia asked me pointed questions about my new life and proposed that we all meet together for dinner soon. My deflection was courteous, but forceful. At the same time, my real life was going swimmingly. The expansion of my company was outpacing my ability to manage it. Samuel and I tied the knot in a beautiful little ceremony. There were members of his family, my best friend Leah, a handful of close friends, and a celebrant who had known Samuel from his youth. While on our honeymoon in Italy, we slept in quaint towns, indulged in delicious cuisine, and felt our love deepen with each passing day. Everyone, including ourselves, was amazed by how easily we adjusted to married life. Upon our return, I would consult with clients and grow my business from the comfort of my home office, while Samuel would wake up early to make rounds at the hospital. Every night after work, we'd get in the kitchen and catch up on each other's days. On weekends, we would tend to the garden, try out local eateries, or host friends for informal dinners. It was a life of peace and contentment. Additionally, I experienced an unprecedented sense of tranquility. However, my family couldn't stand the quiet for very long, as I was about to discover. A Tuesday afternoon was the time of the phone call. My phone rang as I was going over a new client's financial statements. I didn't want to let it go to voicemail when I saw Mom's name on the screen, so I answered. My mom's voice seemed noticeably louder than normal when she said, "Leah, honey, I have some exciting news." I was suddenly on high alert. "Oh, Amelia and Daniel bought a new house. It's absolutely gorgeous. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a 3-car garage. It's in that new development on the north side of town, where all the young professionals are moving." As she went into depth about the house, I made the right noises to indicate that I was listening. The description sounded just like the kind of mansion Amelia would pick. Grand, pricey, and built to impress, rather than to accommodate everyday life. Next month, she's organizing a housewarming celebration. Mom went on to say, "The whole family's invited, of course. I'm so excited to see everyone together. It's been too long since we've all been in the same place." It wasn't subtle that the emphasis was on all. This was Mom's method of making sure I knew I was to be the responsible, encouraging younger sister. "That sounds pleasant," I remarked. "You'll come, won't you? Amelia specifically asked me to make sure you'd be there. She's so excited to show off the house." Without a doubt, she was. As the less accomplished sibling whose presence accentuated Amelia's achievements, I had always provided the ideal audience for her successes. "I'll have to check my schedule," I informed myself. "Oh, come on, Lucy. It's family. Whatever you have going on can wait." I was on the verge of laughing at how casually they disregarded my time and obligations. Even though my job was much more profitable than Amelia's, Mom still considered it a hobby that I could put aside whenever my family needed me. A resolute "I will inform you" came out of my lips. "Well, don't wait too long. Amelia needs a head count for catering." Long after the call ended, I remained seated in my office, gazing out onto the landscape that Samuel and I had collaborated on. A part of me considered just turning down the invitation and staying home. Still, I couldn't help but be intrigued. I was curious to see the house that had necessitated such a show. I was curious to witness whether Amelia and Daniel were truly happy or just acting it out. Perhaps I was curious to see how my loved ones would respond to the changed me. That evening, upon returning home from the hospital, Samuel discovered me standing there. His words, "You look thoughtful," were accompanied by a kiss on my head. He was informed about the invitation and the phone call by me. As usual, he listened without passing judgment. He then asked, "Do you want to go once I had finished?" I'm not sure. Part of me thinks it would be masochistic, but part of me is curious about the house, about whether they've changed at all, about whether they can see who I am now, or if they'll still treat me like the disappointing little sister who can't get her life together. For an instant, Samuel remained silent. "You know that their opinion of you doesn't change who you are, right? You've built an amazing life. You're successful, you're happy, you're loved. Whether they can see that or not is their problem, not yours." Saying, "I know," I continued, "but I spent so many years trying to earn their approval. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be completely free of that. Maybe going would help you find out." Obviously, he was correct. The day after that, I contacted Mom to let her know that Samuel and I would be going. Everything about the housewarming party met my expectations. The mansion was massive and clinical, furnished with pricey pieces that gave the impression of having been handpicked by an interior designer rather than a loving family. Roughly 50 individuals showed up, and I didn't recognize the majority of them. Amelia extended an invitation to her coworkers, gym buddies, book club members, and a number of strangers who lived in her neighborhood. It was less of a party and more of a networking gathering. As usual, Amelia appeared stunning. She looked stunning in a designer gown that would have put most people's mortgage payments in the red, and her hair and cosmetics were also impeccable. Still, her smile was fragile, and her flitting from group to group to make sure everyone was gawking at her stunning house spoke of desperation. Daniel was regaling the crowd by the bar with tales of his college football heyday, just like he had done for years. He looked weak and defeated, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for him because of his weight increase and hair loss. Playing the role of the jubilant parents and bragging about their daughter's achievements to anyone who would listen was Richard and Mom at their most comfortable without ever stating my name or occupation. They introduced Samuel and me to a handful of individuals as Amelia's sister and her husband. Samuel felt my hand tighten as soon as he realized. A soft whisper of, "How are you doing?" came from him. More pleasant than I had anticipated, I thought to myself. Rather of being upset, I felt disconnected while seeing this performance. I no longer cared about the characters in this story, and these individuals were complete strangers to me. I hated the house tour. As she guided groups of guests through the house, Amelia pointed out the pricey furnishings and elaborate details. The walk-in closet in the master bedroom was larger than the one in my previous apartment. The kitchen was equipped with all new, high-quality appliances. The 12-person table in the formal dining room seemed uninviting and chilly. We were briefly alone in the kitchen, and Amelia asked, "What do you think?" Afterwards, "I must say it's truly remarkable," I remarked in actuality. "I realize it's bigger than what you're used to," she continued, flashing that usual condescending smile. "But Daniel and I are planning for the future. We want to have kids, and we want them to have space to grow. It was obvious my house was too cramped and unfit for somebody with lofty goals. That remark would have hurt more 3 years ago. Now all I could do was feel bad for her. She seemed taken aback by my tone as she studied me intently as I said, "It's beautiful, Amelia. I hope you'll be very happy here," saying, "You seem different," she continued. "Do I?" "More confident. I guess it suits you." It was a compliment she'd never really offered me before, and I was truly moved. "I am grateful," I murmured. "I'm happy," she said. "Good." And for an instant, it appeared as though she truly meant it. As for the remainder of the gathering, nothing went wrong. Even my parents, who were clearly amazed by Samuel's achievements and his evident dedication to me, were captivated by him. We departed early the following day, stating that he had an early procedure. As we made our way home, Samuel inquired, "Was it precisely what you were hoping for? Expensive, impressive, and devoid of any genuine character? And what are your thoughts on that?" I reflected on it, feeling a sense of relief. That life, the mansion, the ideal marriage, the acceptance of one's family, was something I used to aspire to. Despite the admiration it would receive from my family, I knew it would only bring me misery after viewing it in person, particularly at that moment, because it would imply that I had to change into someone else to get something that ought to have been offered to me for free. Quietness enveloped us as we continued our journey home. Gratitude washed over me as I gazed at our house. Beautiful, humble, character-filled. As we pulled into our driveway, I thought, home was here. That was sufficient. This was the pinnacle. For some reason, I assumed that was going to be all. By witnessing Amelia's new existence, I was able to affirm my desire for none of it and demonstrate to myself that I had progressed beyond relying on my family's approval. Everything was resolved. However, it is not easy for families, particularly dysfunctional ones, to let go. The remarks began a few weeks subsequent to the celebration. In her inoffensive phone calls, Mom would drop hints about Amelia's impending house decorating, or Daniel's plans to get a boat to complement his 3-car garage. Samuel and I were asked when we were planning to upgrade, and there were subtle jabs about my modest abode. Amelia began sharing more photos and videos on social media, chronicling her splurges and DIY endeavors. A redesign of the picture-perfect kitchen, new furnishings, and expert landscaping. Their ever increasingly lavish, and to be honest, unaffordable, lifestyle was on full display in every post. The source of the funds began to elude me. Although Amelia's marketing earnings were respectable, they were insufficient to cover such extravagant expenditure. Although not particularly remarkable, Daniel's pay was adequate. They appeared to be adding costs to their budget on a weekly basis, and the house alone must have put a strain on their finances. When Samuel and I encountered Daniel at the supermarket on a Saturday morning, it validated my concerns. He seemed anxious and exhausted. A strange smile spread across Daniel's face as Samuel spoke of the lovely new home. "Oh, it's fantastic," he exclaimed. "A little more than we bargained for financially speaking, but Amelia has her heart set on making it perfect." "These things have a way of working out," Samuel replied, with an air of tact. "I hope so," he said. "Between us, the mortgage payments are significant. I'm considering taking a weekend job and picking up extra shifts at work." I felt a twinge of sorrow for him. I could tell that the pressure was taking a toll on Daniel, who wasn't exactly the most driven person on the planet, but was basically good at heart. "If you ever need any financial advice, I do consulting work. I might be able to help you figure out a budget that works," I remarked. A look of true appreciation spread across Daniel's face. I gave him my number and urged him to call me if he wanted to talk. He said, "Really? That would be amazing. Amelia keeps saying we just need to make more money, but I think we might need to spend less instead." And so, we exchanged numbers. Samuel shook his head as we drove home. "You realize Amelia's going to hate that, right? Her little sister helping her husband with money problems." "Probably," I responded. "But Daniel seems like he's drowning, and I can't just watch that happen. Even after everything, Daniel never did anything to me. His only crime was marrying my sister." He chuckled. "You're a better person than I am. I'd probably let him sink just out of spite." "No, you wouldn't," I said. "You would do what I'm doing because it's the right thing to do." He extended his hand and squeezed mine briefly. "This is why I love you." Daniel never contacted me. It didn't totally shock me. Either he independently decided against it, or Amelia discovered our communication and ended it. In any case, it was likely for the best. Financial counseling was just the latest drama in my already troubled extended family. The spending, however, and the social media posts detailing it persisted. I couldn't tell who Amelia was competing with, but it seemed like she was always chasing someone, maybe even herself. The posts started coming more often and with increasing detail, videos showing her exercising in their new home gym, images of pricey meals, weekend retreats, and expertly set rooms. The situation reached a peak 6 months later when Mom called with news that was expected, but nevertheless caught everyone off guard. "Lucy, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to hear it from someone else." I felt sick. This is how most talks begin, and trust me, they seldom end well. "What's wrong?" "Amelia and Daniel are getting divorced." My workplace chair gave way beneath me. "What happened?" "I don't know all the details. Amelia says they grew apart, wanted different things. Daniel apparently wasn't supportive of her ambitions. That was Amelia's version anyway." I wondered what Daniel's side of the story would be. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "No matter how much I disliked Amelia, I never intended for her to be unhappy." "She's definitely struggling," Mom went on to say. "The house is too expensive for her to manage on her own, and Daniel's being difficult about the divorce settlement. She might have to sell." That was it, what the call was actually about. "That's tough," I began. "I was hoping, well, I know you're doing well financially now. Maybe you could help her out, just temporarily, until she gets back on her feet." I was taken aback by its audacity. They wanted me to help Amelia get out of the financial jam she got herself into after years of treating me like a failure, ignoring my achievements, and excluding me from family gatherings. "Mom, I know it's a lot to ask, but she's your sister, Lucy. Family helps family. Close relatives support one another." Where was that philosophy when Amelia breezed through college and I struggled? Where was it when I was getting patronizing comments about my choices in life while working retail jobs? In all the 30 years that I had spent attempting to gain acceptance into this family, where had it gone? "I'll think about it," I said finally, since I was not prepared to argue with her over the phone. "Thank you, sweetheart. I knew you'd understand. Amelia will be so relieved." I remained in my office for quite some time after the call ended, gazing at the financial documents scattered around my desk. I was excelling above and beyond. There would be no noticeable effect on my finances if I helped Amelia. I wasn't asked if I could lend a hand. The question was if I ought to. When Samuel returned home, he discovered me there, my gaze fixed on the papers. "Bad day?" he asked gently. I told him about the phone call. I could feel his jaw clenching as I spoke, yet his attentive listening was unwavering. Now that I finished, I need to clarify this, he said. Your sister spent herself into debt trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, is getting divorced partly because of the financial stress she created, and now your mother wants you to pay for her mistakes. That about right? That's about the size of it. And what did your mother say about all the times you could have used help? All the times Amelia got support that you didn't? Nothing, because that's different, apparently. Lucy, you know I'll support whatever decision you make, Samuel said, taking a seat across from me. But I have to ask, what do you think would happen if you said no? They'd be angry, disappointed. They'd probably stop speaking to me altogether. And would that be a loss? The question was reasonable. In what ways might I be penalized? Infrequent phone conversations in which I was made to feel inferior? Invitations to events where my presence was utterly neglected? Being the family scapegoat was hardly a privilege. I'm unsure, I admitted truthfully. Part of me thinks it would be a relief, but they're still my family. Being related to someone doesn't give them the right to treat you badly, and it doesn't obligate you to enable their poor decisions. Obviously, he was correct. But it's one thing to know something intellectually, and quite another to experience it emotionally. I mulled over the choice for several days afterward. My best friend, Leah, who is always honest, was the one I spoke to. When I explained Mom's request, she didn't hesitate. Are you insane? She said, eyes wide. These people have treated you like garbage for decades, and now they want you to pay for the privilege? Tell them to pound sand. Still, I couldn't help but reflect on Daniel, who had looked so frazzled and anxious that day in the grocery store. Even though it was difficult, I couldn't help but feel bad for Amelia. No one is immune to the emotional toll that a divorce can take, even the ones who cause it. Ultimately, I gained clarity after speaking with Claire, Samuel's sister. Claire had a gift for sifting through people's feelings and getting to the core of things. She was a therapist specializing in family dynamics. The question isn't whether you can afford to help, she said one night over dinner. The question is whether helping would actually be helpful. What do you mean? I asked. If you bail Amelia out, what does she learn? That her choices don't have consequences? That she can always count on other people to fix her problems? Is that really helping her? Or is it just enabling her to keep making poor decisions? But if I don't help, she could lose her house. She could lose the house she bought with money she didn't have to impress people she doesn't even like. Would that really be the worst thing in the world? Claire had a point. Assisting Amelia in evading the repercussions of her decisions would not teach her anything or influence her behavior. It would only delay the reckoning she needed to face. A day later, I contacted Mom to inform her that I would not be providing Amelia with any funds. The reaction was predictable. Indignation, guilt trips, accusations of selfishness, and betrayal. My mother sobbed as she expressed her disappointment in me. On the phone, Richard lectured me about family responsibilities. Even worse than before, Amelia herself called later that week. Her voice was heavy with emotion as she cried out, I can't believe you would leave me in this state. I'm your sister, Lucy. How can you watch me lose everything and not care? I do care, I said calmly, but giving you money won't solve the real problem. What real problem? The problem is that you're living beyond your means and have been for years. Giving you money now would just enable you to keep making the same mistakes. So you're going to let me lose my house to teach me a lesson? What kind of person does that? The kind of person who's learned that sometimes love means saying no. She abruptly ended the call. What followed was a challenging few months. Unfortunately, Amelia did lose the house. Daniel refused to continue making mortgage payments for a home he no longer lived in, and she couldn't afford it on her own. She had to sell most of her pricey furnishings because they wouldn't fit into her new, smaller apartment across town. Richard and Mom were furious with me. They cut me out of all future family gatherings and made it clear they blamed me for Amelia's problems. I didn't miss the irony. For years, I'd been the one they scolded for not taking responsibility. And now, when I refused to shoulder someone else's, I was punished for it. But as the months passed, something unexpected happened. Amelia began to appear lighter, freer, without the burden of maintaining her lavish facade. Her social media posts became less frequent but more genuine. She shared photos of herself reading, going for walks, cooking in her small kitchen. Instead of showing off luxury items, she showed her new dog, Max, a scruffy little rescue with more heart than pedigree. In every picture, both of them looked genuinely happy. She even changed jobs, moving from a flashy agency to a smaller firm that allowed more flexibility, less stress, and more authenticity. 6 months after her divorce was finalized, I ran into her at the downtown farmers market. For the first time in years, she looked genuinely peaceful, holding a basket of vegetables and smiling. "Lucy," she said, surprised but not angry. "Hey, Amelia," I replied. "How are you doing?" "Good, actually. Really good." She pointed to her basket. "I'm learning to cook. Turns out it's kind of therapeutic." "That's great," I said. "You look peaceful." She laughed softly. "That's not a word anyone's ever used to describe me before, but yeah, I think I am. Losing the house was awful at the time, but it forced me to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I was supposed to want." "And what do you want?" "A life that fits me," she said simply, "not one that just looks good from the outside." We talked a while longer, and it was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. As we said goodbye, she hesitated. "I was really furious with you for not helping me," she admitted. "But I think you were right. I needed to figure this out on my own." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something real, a moment of understanding I'd never expected to have. 3 weeks ago, Mom called again. "I'm taking Amelia out for her birthday dinner," she said. "Just a small celebration at that new place downtown. Would you like to join us?" Her voice was softer than usual. It felt like an olive branch, or at least a truce. "I'll give it some thought," I told her. "Please do," she said. It would mean a lot to Amelia, and to me. In the end, I decided to go. I wasn't exactly eager to step back into the family dynamic, but I wanted to see if things had changed, if I could sit at that table and still hold the boundaries I'd fought so hard to create. Last night, at dinner, Mom was in her usual form. Between bites of grilled salmon, she gushed about Amelia's old housewarming party from the previous year. "Your sister's party was absolutely delightful," she said, smiling. "When are you going to catch up?" I felt the words hit like a slap. Even now, after everything that had happened, after Amelia had lost her house, rebuilt her life, and learned humility, Mom was still measuring me against her. And that was when it clicked. Nothing had changed. Even if Mom welcomed me back to the table, I would always be her disappointing daughter, the one who never quite lived up to her perfect sister. It didn't matter that Amelia's success had been built on debt and delusion, or that I had built something real and lasting. I looked at her, fork raised, waiting for me to explain my smaller house, my quieter life, my different choices, and I realized I was done explaining. "Last year I hosted mine," I said evenly. Mom's fork froze in midair. The table went silent. Amelia's wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. Richard even looked up from his phone. It felt like the entire restaurant held its breath. Mom's expression shifted from confusion to hurt, then anger, then a wounded pride. Finally, she found her voice. "I don't understand." "I bought a house 2 years ago," I said. "Samuel and I had a housewarming party last year. It was lovely. About 40 people, all of whom actually care about us. You weren't invited because you've spent the last 30 years making it clear that you don't care about my life unless it reflects well on you." "Lucy," Amelia whispered, "maybe we should—" "No," I interrupted. "I'm tired of pretending this is normal. I'm tired of being treated like a consolation prize and then expected to be grateful for scraps of attention." A tear rolled down Mom's cheek. "How can you say that? You're my daughter. I love you." "Do you?" "Because love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's action. It's showing up. It's being proud of someone for who they are, not disappointed in them for who they're not." "I am proud of you," she said weakly. "When have you ever shown it? When I graduated from college working 2 jobs? When I started my business? When I married a man who loves me? Because I don't remember any celebrations for those things." By now the tears were flowing freely. "I didn't know you felt this way." "That's because you never asked. You were too busy comparing me to Amelia." Amelia stared down at her plate. For the first time, she looked ashamed. I stood, placing my napkin on the table. "I have a beautiful house, a husband who adores me, a business I built myself, friends who value me, a life that makes me happy. I don't need to catch up to anyone, because I'm not in a race." I set enough cash on the table to cover my meal and a generous tip. "Happy birthday, Amelia," I said softly. "I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for." Then I walked away, calm, steady, and free. As I stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air wrapped around me like a balm. The sound of clinking glasses and muted conversation faded behind me, replaced by the steady rhythm of my heels against the pavement. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from my family. I was walking toward myself. Samuel was waiting in the car across the street. When he saw me approach, he smiled softly, reading everything he needed to know from my expression. "How did it go?" he asked. "It's over," I said simply, sliding into the passenger seat. "Finally over." He didn't press for details. Instead, he reached over, took my hand, and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, for once I actually am." As we drove home, the streetlights streaked across the windshield like ribbons of gold. I thought about the years I had spent trying to earn something that should have been given freely: love, respect, acknowledgement. I thought about every dinner where I'd bitten my tongue, every comment I'd swallowed, every attempt to prove my worth to people who had already decided it for me. But tonight, something had shifted. The moment I spoke up, the moment I drew that invisible line in the sand, something inside me finally unclenched. We pulled into our driveway, the porch light spilling onto the cobblestone path. The sight of our home, modest, warm, alive, filled me with quiet pride. Inside, Samuel poured us each a glass of wine. "To what should we toast?" he asked. I thought for a moment, then smiled. "To peace, the kind that doesn't need permission." He raised his glass. "To peace." We clinked our glasses, the sound sharp and satisfying. Later that night, as I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching Samuel read, I realized that peace wasn't just the absence of chaos. It was the presence of self-acceptance. I no longer needed Mom's approval, or Amelia's validation, or anyone's applause. I had built something real. Over the next few weeks, there was silence. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive comments through mutual acquaintances, just quiet. And it was glorious. Then one evening, about a month later, there was a soft knock on my door. When I opened it, Amelia stood there. She looked nervous, holding a small potted plant in her hands. A lavender, my favorite. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. She walked in, glancing around the house as if she were seeing it for the first time. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "It feels real." "Thank you," I said, smiling faintly. "It is." She placed the lavender on the counter and took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize," she said finally, "for everything. For the way I treated you growing up, for competing with you, for letting Mom pit us against each other. I didn't see it then, but I do now." Her voice trembled, and for once there was no defensiveness, no pride, just honesty. "I spent years trying to prove I was perfect," she continued, "and it nearly destroyed me. When I lost everything, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. But maybe I needed to finally understand what mattered." I listened quietly, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said, "but I wanted you to know I'm trying to do better." I took a deep breath. "Amelia," I said gently, "I forgave you a long time ago. I just stopped waiting for you to ask." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since we were children, she hugged me, not out of obligation, but from something real. We stood there for a long time, two sisters who had finally stopped performing and started healing. When she left, the house felt lighter somehow. I looked at the lavender on the counter and smiled. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a beginning. Later that night, Samuel wrapped his arms around me as we sat on the porch. "You seem peaceful," he said softly. "I am," I whispered, "maybe for the first time in my life." The cicadas hummed, the air was warm, and the stars blinked above us like quiet witnesses. I realized then that sometimes healing doesn't come with apologies or validation. It comes when you stop chasing what was never yours to begin with. And for me, peace wasn't found in being the daughter they finally accepted. It was in being the woman who no longer needed them to.